All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Traction Thursday. We have an exciting speaker. Michael Lesniak is going to speak with us in a little bit, but before we begin, it's always our tradition to quickly go around the room and introduce ourselves. I'll start with myself. I'm Alex Taylor. I work for Nubo Co., which is a nonprofit organization based out of Cedar Rapids, Iowa, dedicated to economic development through computer science education, K-12, and adult computer science education and entrepreneurship. And I'm on the entrepreneurship side of the house. And I'm working specifically in rural Iowa, the southeast corner, to help develop the ecosystem. And part of the development of the ecosystem is hosting meetings like this. And Bob Ferguson has been very generous with his time and his network to invite most of you here, and some of you, through word of mouth, are now starting to attend.
Small rooms are scarier than big rooms. I just wanted, I think a lot of people know me, but I just wanted to just quickly first tell you a little bit what I've been doing the last 20 years. So I spent a lot of time in South Korea, mostly in innovation space. And I worked on some interesting projects. This is our installation at the premier Telecom store in Hongdae. Launched a True Innovation Lab where we had we ran over 300 startups through there, including the ones I was mentioning to Jeff earlier. Did some first live esports broadcast at Beat Saber with Korean, they call them BJs, broadcast jockeys. That was fun. Done some pretty interesting stuff. Some of the projects that I've worked on, well, we can look at this later, I guess. But they include, you know what, I have a screen here, but I'm gonna just close it. But they include launching Quest 2 in Korea with Meta. Built that business for over 3 years, about $100 million in revenue. Took Korea from, well, one of the co-founders of Oculus is actually Korean. That business didn't go so well initially. But then I worked with Dylan to work with some of his contacts at Meta, and we managed to get Korea from really non-existent in the VR space to one of the leaders in metaverse. Done some really interesting projects with Andrew Nung. I don't know if any of you are familiar with him. So we ran a computer vision project with SK Hynix, the second largest semiconductor company. Really, they work on memory chips, but in the world, which was quite difficult. It's a national security asset, very difficult, but I managed to get into their data center. Pretty awesome stories there. I came back because, last few years, I took what we call a refresh holiday, which after 10 years, we can take 45 days vacation at our company. So I was here for most of that, and I was learning about the environment. So I came back and I started learning about, I was really interested in the environment many years ago. I did MassPerg when I was in university. Proud kid from Fairfield. I got organic food served at our cafeteria. And then I graduated, I got into international relations, decided to move to Korea, and worked on various startups. None of them really massive successes. We did have an exit, and then I went to grad school. And I went back to Korea, and I joined SK, which is the second largest company in Korea today, since LG divested from their mobile devices. And I work at SK Telecom. So SK Telecom is one of the most innovative telecoms in the world. I think there would be hard to find one that's more speedy. I think telcos tend to be pretty slow. We're pretty fast as telcos go. Companies like Deutsche Telekom, Orange, Telefonica, Verizon, they want to work with us to see what the cool use cases are going to be for new network technologies, because we roll out the network at scale much faster than anyone else, partially because we have a lot of density, partially because it's not a very big country, it's the size of Iowa. I've worked with Verizon, Samsung, I've done a lot of interesting projects over the years, but then I came here for my refresh and I was like, I really want to do something with regenerative agriculture and sustainability, and how can you really save the planet, right? Things are getting worse, and we have all this talent and all these things at our fingertips, but people need to actually do it. At the end of the day, people need to do it. My son's here at Maharishi School. I decided to take a leave of absence and see how it goes. So I put together this presentation today. It's my first time presenting it. It's a lot of ideas, but let's see how it goes. So AiLo, it's an AI land operator. So we want to restore today for tomorrow. Our vision is an Earth that's restored to an ecological paradise with resilient, healthy, and thriving communities. People living in balance with nature. So I'm Michael. I've been doing new business innovation for 15 years, with more than 15 years, from startups to SK. And my co-founder, it's a friend of mine, we were talking about this over dinner and lunches for a year, and finally, hey, I'm here, let's do it. And he's like, okay. It's my friend An Byung-ne, we just call him Ray. And he's been working as a product manager, mostly on pretty big platforms, like Alexa-like platforms that we run called Nugu. And now he's at Kakao Enterprise, where he runs their AI platform innovation team. He has about 34 engineers under him. And why are we doing this? Because we want to restore our world for our children. We want our world to grow up in a beautiful place. You know, he grew up in a city, it's like a peninsula in California, it's called Gundam. And, you know, I mean, he just remembers this beautiful nature. There's a river running through it, large grasslands and things, and it's just gone. And a lot of good effort is being made in Korea for quality of food and trying to restore what they call 생태계, so it's like a ecosystem essentially. But still, you know, people are just destroying all this land, and there's not that much of it there, and just so they can have another apartment complex, you know, and it's like, why? You know, that field was much nicer than another, you know, Perugio apartment, right? And so he and I really want to, you know, make a difference in that way. So we thought about Iowa. Well, luckily I'm from Iowa, and you know, Iowa's pretty big in agriculture. So we figured, like, if we can do this in Iowa, it can have a really big impact. So I found some data on Iowa. Some of it's a little old, all of it's old. But you know, I think most people here already know much of this information. But you know, Iowa was essentially prairie and wetland, and you know, basically it's all gone. And Iowa has lost much of, no. Iowa has just lost its biodiversity. It's pretty much gone. And I was looking at the Iowa Natural Resource Development, Natural Resource Department website, and I looked at some of the endangered species list. And I was shocked, not just animals, there's stuff that they're already gone. I don't think they include them on the list anymore. But I was even more shocked when I looked at the plants. That list is really long. And you know, agriculture has done a lot to feed the planet. We have a lot of people on Earth, and so it's hard to just say they're just bad companies, right? I mean, a lot of good intentions, and we've managed to really produce a lot of calories and feed a lot of people, but there's some problems. Erosion and desertification is a problem all over the world. It's a problem here in Iowa. It's a massive problem in California. Water quality is pretty bad. I actually was really surprised when my humidifier stopped working like after a day because there was too much calcification on the filter. So what's going on here? I think this should last at least a couple weeks, right? Yeah, it was a day. It took a day. And poverty, you know, and agriculture today, I think, is not really supporting small communities. And this is a problem with a lot of businesses. They really consolidated over the years. I think you know, people can debate values of shareholder versus stakeholder models, but I think there's a lot of issues with this, not just in agriculture, but in agriculture as well. So instead of having vibrant communities supported by local businesses that can thrive, we have monocropping and consolidated industries that really make it difficult for people to just have an ordinary life. And most people just want to enjoy their time with their family. And I think we should be able to do that. And the problem's getting worse. So I have a bit of a presentation from 2013 or 14 that I made a little bit later. But you know, we talk about the world is, you know, we're getting better, but actually it's getting worse. So today, 30% of the world is food insecure as of 2021, which is almost 1 billion people more than it was in 2015. So the problem is getting worse. And yeah, there's increases in population, but you know, I think if you analyze that data, you'll see that we have a serious issue feeding people. And you know, we say that we need to feed about 10 billion people by 2050, which means we need to produce 70 more calories. while farming is getting more expensive. And at the same time, by 2030, we're not going to have enough water, we're not going to have enough land, and that's not even considering climate shock events, which we'll probably have next year. Anyway, you guys know better than me. But there are solutions. And I think a lot of people here probably know more about these solutions than I do. But we know that there's a way. So nature is really intelligent, and all we have to do is learn what does nature want to do, and how do we work with nature to feed our communities. And so we have a way of how to do it. And digital transformation can provide us the data that we need to help create solutions. But you can't have AI transformation without the data. So when I talk about data and digital transformation in AiLo, I'm sort of shocked when I come here because I'm from South Korea. We have 600 to 800 megabits per second download on our LTE network. 5G is pretty awesome. Yeah. So I know that some people don't like 5G, and I respect that. Some people can be sensitive to that. But the point is that we don't have enough connectivity to really collect the data we need to make some of these solutions really work. And you can't really build robust AI solutions without data. So once you have the data, you do the digital transformation, then you can move on to the AI transformation. But I think here, we're lucky because we can probably do both at the same time. So what is AiLo? So our vision for AiLo is we want to make it easy for any farmer to transition to a regenerative farm and restore their ecology. We want to make it really easy. We want to have an AI system that can say, this is an assessment of your land. These are some of your options. This is a plan that you need to execute. This is how we're going to help you restore it over time. And then once it's restored, help you operate it over time. And I think the ecology part is important here. So what does the operation part mean? I think because, it was a shocking information I read in a book somewhere about Notre Dame. When the Notre Dame Cathedral burnt down, they couldn't figure out how to rebuild it because there were no trees in Europe that they could cut that could sustain the weight of the stones that they needed to build a cathedral because there's no more old growth forests. So Iowa is more prairie than forest, but I think the story holds true, is that to get a truly mature ecology, it's going to take potentially centuries. So when you think about how do you do that? Well, we may end up living that long. It's possible. I think that is a real reality. However, if you're planning for how do you build a system that's going to work over 100, 200, 300 years, I think you need something that's going to outlive the average human lifespan. And I think, thankfully, we now have technology that we can use to do that. So AiLo should be integrated into global databases so that we can assess your land needs, provide business models for new productive outputs, create customized plans to become regenerative and restore the land, and really importantly, work with local, regional, and global vendors to execute and operate that. So that this is a platform that tries to rise all boats. So we want to increase the value of the land and prepare it for the future. So we have ag and we have tech. So on the one hand, we think that it's possible to improve the core business while adding resilience and new opportunities. I think a lot of really interesting companies are working on carbon capture here in Iowa already, just down the road even. I think there's also some really interesting companies like Farm Together and AcreTrader that are trying to bring commercial investors. Also, Propagate is also sort of doing that, it seems like, to make farms more of a almost like publicly traded. But also the biodiversity that you bring from regenerative agriculture will increase revenue. And by adding the tech part, something that a lot of farmers are already familiar with, that's why I put in the ag spot, is that you can lease part of your land to host that infrastructure and potentially even participate in a network and resell it, connectivity. So what about the tech part? So one thing, there's a few things that I think are really interesting. So people talk about advanced connectivity, but they often don't talk about FSO. So FSO is free space optics. People tried it many years ago and it didn't really work. Essentially, it's laser communications. It's what Starlink uses in space. So you can install that at a fraction of the cost of fiber. The downside is it doesn't go as far as fiber does, right? You can't just have it go as long as the glass, as much glass as you put. So there is some limitations in the distance, but it's a potentially affordable and viable solution to get real robust rural broadband without government grants. And AI can really bring speed and resilience. Really, AI has been traditionally about efficiency, but now we're seeing with generative AI, now we're moving into a space where new business models are possible with AI, as well as efficiency. XR, I want to put metaverse in there, but kind of doesn't fit, so I just put XR. So mixed reality, AR and VR are really powerful tools. They're really powerful for marketing. They're empathy machines. You put people in the space, and they feel what you want them to feel. But it's also a powerful tool for planning and operations. So training and education is really important, but you can also use it for operations. It may be a little expensive for farms, it may not be useful, but I think it's something that over time will become more cost effective and will be a powerful tool. A lot of companies use this for architecture today. IoT, precision farming, I think is a big one already. MEC is multi-access edge computing that can be put on a farm to do things, especially in like health tech. You can, for example, take care of your cattle without having to go to a veterinarian thousands of miles away by using edge-hosted AI systems that can evaluate health data. And that's a platform that I'm already working on back in Korea, but we're working on dogs and cats for now. But I think the big idea is cows, horses, larger scale operations, and of course blockchain. So I'm already like way behind. Never can quite get the speed right. So what we want to do is have integrated clusters of farms working with AiLo's platform to drive growth and information. So we want to make it really easy to implement so that we can accelerate returns by working together. We want it to be community driven so that every farm is doing different things and that there's different vendors helping those things grow, helping those farms grow. We want it to be an intergenerational system so that as the land gets passed on, the ecology continues to be improved. And we want to make sure it's future forward. We think that we can attract talented people, like North Carolina has a great ag tech cluster, and they have a great tech system there too. But you can attract talent, you can attract global capital if you're doing future-facing use cases, especially in a place like Iowa, which is #1 in ag. So this is an illustrative idea that Ray and I came up with for what the platform could look like. So you have the AI cloud, which would have some kind of orchestration working with a variety of AI models that were tuned for these use cases, and libraries of vendors, as well as knowledge databases. And then we have our own regional farm labs, and then working with partner farms as well. So, as well as customers and universities, etc., to continuously gather data and information so that the system is constantly improving. And the agents, the AiLo agent could then interact with farmers. It's a M2H is machine-to-human interactions. Vendors, which could be machine-to-machine to human vendors, or even just equipment, which would be machine-to-machine. So we want to build a platform that can really do it all. And this is an idea, we're not making any money today, but we think we can position this to support a variety of business models. Platform as a service, it could be monthly or annual, per acre, per user. I think we need to find that out. What will the market pay? We can work with partners, so if we're supporting a variety of vendors to actually sell their services and products to farmers and implement them, we can take a piece of that sale for sure. And there's a variety of ways to do that. There's ways we can publish it, that could work. Since we're doing it through a platform, we can take retainer fees. There's a variety of ways to do revenue share there. We can also do land appreciation. So if we have our own regional farm, that land itself could be floated on markets and can increase in value over time. For 20 years, it would probably outpace the growth of the stock market. Or we can support like what Propagate is trying to do. So support farmers to actually sell or get investments in their land. Just Farm Together and AcreTrader are building really interesting platforms like that. So we could take transaction fees from helping farmers do that. And we could work with accelerators and venture capitalists, CVCs and private VCs to manage these innovation programs. So we want to build these lab farms, right? So that we're constantly innovating use cases and constantly building the platform. So I think that's why it's really important. So if you're only working with third parties, then you are also dependent on those third parties. So eventually, we do want to have our own farms in regional sections that are, strategically selected land with expert advice. We want to basically take the bottom, not the bottom. We pick from the top 20%. So if you look at companies like AcreTrader, they're looking at the top 2% of land. But that's not restoring anything. They're just saying, like, hey, this land's really good. Want to make some money? It's going to be worth more later because everything else is dying. That's basically their sales pitch. What we're saying is, well, why don't you take the next 18%? We're going to take this terrible land, or not that terrible. It's just the next 18%, and we're going to make it even more valuable because it's not just organic, right? It's going to be truly sustainable. So we're going to sustain. Well, it wasn't Gabe Brown, but someone else says, why would I want to sustain something that's broken? Let's fix it first and then sustain it. I think that's really what we want to do. We want to make it easy for people to do that. So with that program, we can run programs, innovation programs, work with partners, program management fees, or just investments as well. So eventually, I think we want to scale to that sort of level of robust activity. So right now, we want to get a pre-seed investment so we can secure talent. We really want to find a regenerative farmer to work with for 2 or 3 months very closely to understand what the requirements are going to be. We want to work with someone who understands the finances of agriculture really well. I'm currently talking with lots of people about AI technical lead, but it'd be great to find somebody locally as well. We basically want to use that time to really run feasibility studies. And in order to do that, in addition to the team, we're going to need to work with advisors and execute some field research in order to understand what does this platform really need to do granularly, at a really granular level, and essentially develop the MVP requirements from there. Yeah. So once we have the platform built, what we want to do is we want to work right away as a platform. We want this platform to work with lots of people. So one way to do that is to build an innovation program. And so we came up with this idea called Regen Iowa 2035. So welcome to Iowa in 2035. Regenerative agriculture practices and cutting-edge technologies like AI, IoT, and spatial computing have been successfully applied to transform our state into an ecological paradise while increasing revenue, diversifying production, enriching communities, and laying a new foundation for the future of energy production. So we want to put this vision out there. We want to use our platform development. We want to use that program to help with that platform development, but we also want to use that program to help all the companies that are interested in identifying one specific problem or multiple problems in that space, whether it's distribution or soil health, to grow by using cutting-edge technologies with their platform and focused on one goal, and that is making this really easy to execute over time. Once it's easy to execute, everyone will do it. We'll talk about why everyone will do it in just a second, but first, I'm not sure where everybody comes from with the AI spot, so I just threw this slide in there from before because a lot of people are scared about AI. And there's some concerns, but essentially, we've gone through this a lot. Right? This is our 4th industrial revolution, our 2nd machine age. It's Eric Schmidt. So, this is an old slide. This is a presentation I did when AlphaGo happened in Korea, down the street. And, we're looking at a new paradigm, right? We are. And when that happens, there are new economic ideologies. And there are, quote unquote, dangerous inventions, like automobiles. Yeah, they're really dangerous, right? But we've found a way to use them, right? So, I think that AI is just another one of those types of technologies. there's an enormous opportunity, and we can see significant improvements if we use it well. I worked on a project with Andrew Nim years ago, and we were in the lobby right before we walked into this conference. You know, he was gracious enough to do a presentation to the community of entrepreneurs that we work with. And I asked him, like, what do you think about, like, you know, Elon Musk talking about like the AI revolution? Like, you know, worrying about the robot overlords is akin to being concerned about overpopulation at Mars. And I just love that line, you know, and it was specific to Elon because, you know, he knows Elon. And Elon, everybody knows Elon's working on Mars. Like, well, is Elon worried about overpopulation on Mars? No. So why is he worried about, you know, the AI robot overlords? Like, he doesn't even get it. There are a few AI experts that are really concerned. Jeff Hinton is a notable one. But I think in general, you know, there's a big opportunity here. And it's really, really big. So AI is a general purpose technology. This is from PwC. They estimate almost $16 trillion in economic growth from AI in the next 10 years. And 26% GDP growth for local economies. And when they say local economies, you know, they kind of mean macro economies. But, you know, if as a benchmark, you can see how you're doing. And this is from IBC a few years ago. They were saying that by 2026, people will spend about companies will spend around $300 billion on AI technologies. In October, they were saying that number until like February last year. And then in October this year, they revised it to, by 2027, it's going to be $500 billion. And so it's accelerating really fast. And that means in a lot of big companies, they're spending as much as 40% of their IT budget on AI-related activities. Before we talk about AI in agriculture, I want to talk about connectivity, because you can't have really good AI systems without connectivity. But connectivity in agriculture is also fueling a lot of growth. So this is from McKinsey, and they're estimating that growth for agriculture from connectivity in agriculture could be as much as $500 billion in the next, well, less than 10 years at this point, 2030. And that translates into 7 to 9% improvement in productivity. And they're talking about connectivity, they're talking about Bluetooth, RFID, okay. LPWAN, yep, NB-IoT, we've done a lot of stuff with that. We can't do Cat-M1 in Iowa because we don't have a good LTE network, but Cat-M1 would be an interesting one, which is a little bit more robust data. You can do LoRa here. We've done LoRa, but LoRa's sort of not as popular these days. Wi-Fi 6, okay. 5G. 5G would be a good one, but we're already working on 6G, and we don't even have 5G. Right? And for those of you who are worried about 5G, I totally respect that. But I would point out that it's the same bandwidth that's being used for satellite connectivity. So if you have a satellite TV and you're not using 5G, you might want to get rid of your satellite TV. LEO is another big innovation. And LEO is a really interesting innovation for FSO. So the FSO technology companies that I've worked with, there's a couple of them, that's their dream. They want to connect with the satellite networks. That's why they're getting funded. So they want to do things terrestrially to fill things, they help build backhaul for networks in the United States now as well. But that technology could essentially just be pointed up, right? And there's no interference, so it'll have a little bit more range. And yeah, so eventually you could, in theory, several years from now, disrupt the core network infrastructure that was built by AT&T over a century. Which is a big opportunity for people who want to install that on their land, potentially, right? So once you have the connectivity and you have agriculture, AI, and IoT, they show strong growth. But I think there's going to be a lot more. It's hard to find good data on this, to be honest. I think part of it is because people want to separate AI and IoT. There is no AI, there's no IoT without AI. Right? Like you could talk about generative AI, that's cool. But IoT doesn't, you can't do IoT without AI. So there's some machine learning model somewhere. So I put them together. So you know, together it's 55 billion by, you know, in 4 or 5 years. I think that number could be a lot bigger. And the reason why I think that number will be a lot bigger is because a lot of people don't understand AI. A lot of people don't have connectivity, so they can't even consider AI. And nobody's doing generative AI for things like regenerative agriculture. But once you see those platforms come forward, everyone's going to adopt them. And why? This is a study done by BCG. 120% increase on a wheat farm in Kansas by adopting regenerative agriculture. Yeah, that means that instead of losing 25% of their revenue next year, farmers would actually still be earning 65%, more than they learned last year. So according to the USDA, next year farmers will earn 25% less money than they did last year in 2025, 25% less. But if they had regenerative agriculture, they'd be making 65% more. So if magically every farmer was regenerative in January this year, right now, or last month, they would actually be making more money than they did last year, according to this study.
Is that U.S. or worldwide?
This is the United States.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's the USDA. It's just the U.S. But I'm sure it's worldwide. There may be even more issues with conflicts and. Yeah. So with this opportunity there, if it's just easy to do, people are going to do it. Like, why not? I think the challenge is people don't understand, and it can feel risky, and it is risky. I'm sure it's a lot harder than a lot of us realize, but we can make it easier using technology, I think. I didn't really feel confident putting a lot of information about different players in the space that we're looking at, because I think I just need more time to understand them. I'd really like to know what people here think are good companies to look at, but there's quite a few. There's Continuum Ag just down the street. Klim is a German company that's focused on making it easy for farmers to be regenerative, but they're mostly focused on building a network of professionals and then syncing you up with a professional. It's not really technology driven, but there's a few really interesting ones. I really like Farm Together, and I really like companies like FarmBot. But again, I don't know enough to put this here, so next time. These are some of our hypotheses of what our unfair advantages could be. In the telecom industry, we always talk about what's our unfair advantage. Like what makes, because we're very concerned about hyperscalers. And the hyperscalers really took our network and grew tremendously. And so telecoms are very sensitive about this, so we use this term of unfair advantage. So how do we take our unfair advantage, and how do we retain it? And traditionally, that's really about owning the customer and things like that, and we've lost a lot of that. But for us, so what would be our unfair advantage? I think number one is focusing on regenerative from day one. But also, not just regenerative, but focusing on the ecology. So things like strips, right, in Iowa. I think that's a really interesting thing to explore. And what does that look like in different environments? We also bring a global network and a global vision, because we've worked all over the world. We've worked in Latin America. Well, I haven't worked in Latin America. I've worked in the Middle East, Africa, India, Korea, of course. So we see that there's technology available to us all over, but there's also use cases available all over. And if we can do it in a place like Iowa, which is #1 in agriculture, then there's no reason that people won't look at this and say, well, if Iowa can do it, everyone can do it. So we can have the biggest impact. Why North Carolina? Why not Iowa? North Carolina has a tech center mostly because of Epic Games, is my understanding, which is great, but Iowa should have that too. So that's AiLo. We need you. We're looking for co-founders, ag experts, AI experts, finance experts. I've been talking through my network with AI people. There's a few folks that I've been talking with, but it'd be great to talk with anybody and see who's interested. Looking for advisors and angels. So if we can get a pre-seed, my co-founder Ray is committed to come to Iowa for 2 to 3 months, we want to use that. Well, we still have to budget it out, but we want to use whatever we can get to really do a feasibility study, understand what it is, travel, meet with Gabe Brown, maybe go to Germany, meet with Klim. We want to meet with the experts, and we want to work with a local regenerative farmer. That'd be awesome. And really understand, what does an MVP look like? And when I say MVP, I've worked with a lot of startups over the years, and I think the part that's hardest to get is the V. What is actually viable? So we have a big vision. We know there's a big problem. We can do a lot. But how do you get started? So what's the best place to start? And I have some ideas of what that might be, but we won't know unless we can really take the time to work with people and get it done. So I've taken a lot more time than I'm supposed to, but yeah. Thank you guys.
You're ready. Pre-seed round, what are you looking for financially?
Yeah, I mean, we do have some numbers in mind, but maybe talk privately about it.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, we do have some numbers in mind. Nothing crazy.
Okay.
Nothing crazy. Yeah. Yeah. You know, I think definitely under $1 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I was.
Yeah.
Does everybody understand the power of the AI part of that whole
Not
thing?
totally.
Oh my gosh, I mean, that part to me, if you're not like in AI every day, you might think, what?
Yeah.
But that's the driver, that's the heart of the whole thing. And
Yes.
I think that part, people really need to see how that works, because that part is amazing.
Yeah, so that's the main output from, that's the other, so we want the MVP, but we want a demo, right? So we want to spend that time to really understand how do we build a demo and say this is, you know, a very rough version of what a beta will be.
Yeah.
And I think after you get a seed round, you can build a beta platform that actually does some functional things. And then you understand, you know, how do you then build something that can grow and then scale. But yeah, definitely.
Right,
We need to be able to show it to people.
Yeah, so for a farmer to get, like, here's my land, and to get this whole plan, this is what it could do, this is how you do it, this is the timeline, this is the way it works, the whole plan right there
Exactly.
is brilliant.
Yeah, so right now there's a lot of news about foundational models, and you know the CEO of Databricks had this really great comment, which you know AI systems kept doing the summary, asking Claude to do summaries, and it kept missing this.
What is an AI?
Yeah. It's like ChatGPT,
Yeah.
but it's the guys who built, a lot of the guys who built OpenAI left OpenAI to build an ethical equivalent called, company's called Anthropic. We're an investor.
Oh, great.
Like big dollar figure,
I
small
can see
percentage. Yeah. It's a really cool system, but it misses things like this analogy. And the analogy was, you know, today people are looking at AI. It's like the 90s of the internet. Everybody wanted to invest in Cisco. You know, Cisco was the internet. And it was worth $500 billion, you know, not really, but, you know, somebody was, you know, some ridiculous number. And, you know, it's still a great company, you know, it's a really important company, you know, but it wasn't the internet. You know, what really drove the internet were the use cases. And when you're looking at it, it's like, that's where we have to look now. There's no reason to take $1 billion and build a competitor for Inflection AI or Anthropic or OpenAI. There's no reason to do that. What the real value is that these models are like a baby, they're like a child. So they have all this potential, but you need to have people come in and build use cases to take what they've built and tune it to specific use cases. And when you're looking at a regenerative agriculture system, you're talking about actually a lot of use cases. There's a lot of use cases just on one farm in one environment. So this is a huge, ambitious idea. You know, it's not something that we just like, you know, Andrew Ng likes to present as, you know, oh, you know, you can do what you could do in 3-5 years, you could do it in 2 to 3 months now. Yes, if you're trying to like, you know, publish a song for a video game that, you know, teenagers are going to play, like you can do, but if you're trying to really identify, you know, really impactful use cases, and there's going to be a lot of them, just on one farm. So you need to spend the time to work with people and build it and identify what they are. But those use cases are where the value is going to be. So yeah. So I worked with not well, a lot, but the initial founding companies were SK Telecom, Deutsche Telekom, Singtel, and Etisalat, which is now called EAND. Now, Etisalat is the largest Middle East telco. They have 160 million subscribers. Deutsche Telekom, largest in Europe, probably. I don't know. But Telefonica, all their subscribers are not in Europe, really, so they're probably Deutsche Telekom's the largest. And Singtel is small because they're from Singapore. There's not many people there, but they actually, through their investments around Asia, they're really huge. So we built the Global Telco AI Alliance, and this is what it was. Like, it's still ongoing. I mean, we're talking about really talented people working on this, and all we're doing is talking about what are the use cases. And the other issue with the use cases is the cost. I can't really disclose how I know this, but let's just say that companies like Microsoft are not making money on generative AI today. They're losing money. So even though people think, $20 a month is a pretty big chunk of their monthly spend, this is barely covering half of what it costs to run these systems. So there's some real issues, but those costs are going to come down. Transformers are going to improve, which is a technology that's used for some of these AI models. And we're going to be able to do things like distribute GPU usage. And there's lots of people working on innovating how to make AI costs come down. So while they're doing that, right, we can figure out, how to make this work for regenerative agriculture. Yeah.
Have you looked at some other companies like Landscan.ai? It seems like they're kind of doing some similar, but not regenerative related stuff to you. Like plants, they scan all your plants and they do soil.
Yeah, I have. There is a cool. Yeah, I think it's called. I'm not sure if it's the same one, but there's a few. There's some that look from. They're trying to do like bird's eye view and try to use different sensor data. I've also worked with. We actually invested in a company in Korea that they were. Building a platform, we and Orion, you guys know Orion, they build snack, they're like a snack company from Korea. They sell their snacks in Ivy, you can buy some. They do, their big famous one is a choco pie. Have you ever had a choco pie? So Orion is one of the largest potato growers in the world. So we actually invested in a company, what they do is they do precision agriculture for water usage. So there's definitely people, a lot of interesting people working on some really cool platforms. I don't see them as competitors, right? Because this is such a big space. And well, even if it was regenerative, right? I mean, we're talking about a lot of food and a lot of land, that's why we want to position the platform as, we'll do things that other companies can't do. That's obviously the goal. But, more importantly, we want to be able to enable these companies to actually work with more customers, right? So that's really, that's more of the goal, right? We want to make it easy for people that are doing specific things like, precision water usage, right? Make it really easy for people to find them, implement them, and work with them. Sorry, I know I'm over time. Any other questions?
I thought my phone was off.
It strikes me that the key is you already identified it, that a farm is a complex situation, and there's multiple potential use cases for an AI application. And I don't know if you stumbled across in your research, Tom Steyer and his wife Kat Taylor outside of the Bay Area, they have what's called Tomcat Ranch, which is, I think it's probably 12 years plus into a research for regenerative ag. And Steyer, being the VC guy he is, seems like a pretty good potential partner. Plus, you'd be able to walk into an established research facility that would probably have pretty good data.
Yeah.
So I would Google them up. Tomcat, cat with a K, K-A-T, Tomcat Ranch.
We'll check that out.
They came, they when Steyer was running for president, they were in Fairfield quite a lot, and that Tom Steyer.
That time, so.
And he's, they're really excited about what they're doing there.
Yeah.
And they, what you just said about, Iowa is the place to do this because that's the ultimate judo. If you could come up with, transition ag driven by ag tech, oh man, everybody's, it's actually a really active VC niche right now.
Yeah.
It has been for a couple of years.
Yeah, I was looking at Ag Funder and looking at some of their reports and their research. There's a lot of interesting investments, not just in management, but in novel food systems and things. So,
Well, think of John Deere, man. All
John
the
Deere.
equipment, technology stuff that's got to be going on.
yeah, absolutely.
We have time for one more question.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
So at the very beginning of your slide show, you talked about Iowa and this prairie, right? When white man got here, it was a prairie. And I was born and raised in Iowa. My grandfathers on both sides were farmers. And I did a little research at the National Museum of Natural History in Iowa City. And before it was prairie, it was all, I might have these backwards, but it went one way or the other. I think before it was prairie, for millions and millions of years, it was a forest of deciduous plants. Before that, millions and millions of years of coniferous plants, right? And when I see Iowa, all I see is, if we've done all this, we have a blank canvas. We have the most potential to create whatever it is that we want. We don't have to follow any rules. We don't have mountains set aside. We don't have a giant national park. We aren't branded in any way. We have total creativity to create that. And I think that in your vision, when you put in that, you're talking about the VR, you're like thinking about it. It's like in Iowa, you really could do anything, and it doesn't have to be. It can be prairie strips, right? If we want to go back to prairie, we can. But we also could go on to something that's just like, whoa, this is like blowing my mind what we can really do here.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree, and I think some of the things that I've read and watched on YouTube, I mean, they talk about novel ecosystems today. I mean, they're quite common because we've been so disruptive as a species that lots of other species have learned to live together and they just never did before. Yeah, totally agree. I mean, I think there's going to be limitations based on just the environment itself, but yeah, there's tons of interesting things we could do. What I did find on my research in Iowa is that it's really uniquely positioned as a transition between the forests and the Great Plains. And I think that that's also really unique. I mean, I think people travel, I mean, Colorado, there's nothing to do in Colorado, right? But like people go to Colorado because of the Rocky Mountains. I mean, Iowa to me is just as beautiful. Everybody's Lord of the Rings fan. When you come here, it's like the Shire. And we can totally, I think, restore it. Yeah, I call Iowa the Shire when I tell my friends, what's Iowa like? It's like the Shire. Go look at that. Yeah, I mean, and there's a place you can go, it's called New Zealand, and you can go check it out. They've got the Shire and they got the mountains. It's like Colorado and Iowa wrapped in one. and California, right? So I don't think we'll get an ocean, anytime soon. But, yeah, I think there's a lot of potential to be creative. Yeah.
What companies have you already been working with as far as the AI, and what type of custom GPTs have you got trained on things such as the sustainable agriculture and regenerative agriculture?
We're just getting started. So what I've done is I've talked with some AI executives in Korea before I came here to see if they thought it was a good use case, and they loved it. So we have folks that we are talking to about working on this, but as of yet, we haven't trained anything. So we're working with, we want to work with, we want to make sure we have, it's like Tom Steyer's Ranch. We want to make sure that we have partners like that so that the AI engineers that we're talking to have something they can really sink their teeth into. So blank slate for now, but we have a good network of people that are interested in working on it.
Right. Let's give Michael another round.